So we're back to the history of St. Benedict's Church and School. And we just talked about the fact that the first temporary church was completed in the early months of 1921. It was always thought to be temporary, of wooden construction, wasn't going to last forever, and certainly Father Tobin had ambitions that went well beyond a church that would accommodate only 300 people. So I'm sure he began planning immediately for a permanent church and a permanent school building, something far more substantial and to accommodate a larger number of parishioners and students than the existing saloon and wooden church building on the property. So it was in 1930 that ground was finally broken on what was to be the permanent, at least for then, the larger, more permanent structure. It was an all-in-one building. It still exists today. Those of us who are familiar with St. Benedict's School know exactly which building I'm talking about. It faces toward Main Street. Like the rectory, which was built of sandstone, this new building that was built in 1931 was also a large sandstone building, and it was a combined church and school. 2 floors. The first floor was large enough to accommodate 10 classrooms. And the second floor, the front of the building on Main Street in particular, in effect was the church. And if you come to the school building today and go up to the second floor and go into what is, and for many years, has been the school auditorium and gym, the fact that it was once a church is very, very obvious and recognizable. A little bit of history here. I was perhaps one of the last people baptized in that old church in 1949. That was the year of my birth. That's when I joined the parish. So do the math. You can figure out how old I am. But in any case, that new building, the permanent building, was finished and first occupied in 1931. The cost, Sister Hilda doesn't tell us what the cost of that building was. It obviously required a large loan and a large mortgage. The mortgage was finally paid in 1944, and she tells us that the parish, for that reason, was finally debt-free in 1945, which would have been the 25th year of the parish's existence. And again, our good Father Tobin was never one to look backward. He always looked forward. He already saw that the enrollment of the school was growing. He saw that the size of the parish, the number of parishioners, was growing. And it didn't take him long to begin, I'm sure, raising money and making plans to build the church that we have today. Over the years, I'm going to go back to the point I made in Bishop Turner's letter, where he said that the boundaries of the parish would be determined at a later date. He also said nothing about the name of the parish, and it was, by the way, named, of course, for St. Benedict, but also recognized that at the time, in 1920-21, when that wooden church was dedicated, the Pope was Pope Benedict XV, so the name Benedict seemed to come easily to mind. But what about the boundaries of the parish? Well, the bishop talked in terms of going out to Eggertsville Snyder, to a parish, to start a parish of undetermined boundaries. Between the years 1925 and 1953, portions of what might have been considered the territory of St. Benedict's Parish initially were broken off and became all or part of other new churches and new parishes that were started in the area, beginning in 1925 with some of our territory being devoted to the new Christ the King parish. And then over the years, part of our territory, now this surprised me a great deal, part of our territory was given over to the newly formed Blessed Sacrament Parish in Tonawanda. Another portion was made part of St. Christopher's Parish on Niagara Falls Boulevard. St. Aloysius to our south took what was initially part of St. Benedict's Grand Territory. And finally, in 1953, St. Leo the Great Parish on Sweet Home Road took the last part of St. Benedict's property, you might say, or territory, and converted it into our sister parish, and today our co-parish, St. Leo the Great. So that was a pretty large territory that young Father Tobin was given a charge to create a parish in. And when you think of that ranging territory and the fact that initially, at least, he found only 30 Catholic families, that's a lot of land and not a whole lot of families, although I suspect strongly that a lot of that land was farmland, highly rural, not very densely populated at the time, certainly nothing like it is now. But in any case, as I said, Father Tobin, in the wake of the burning of the mortgage in 1944, started his planning for the new and yet larger church that is our church now today, facing in a southwest angle toward the corner of Main Street and Eggert Road. And that church, our present church, was completed finally in 1951. And that's the church we occupy today. So that's kind of where Sister Hilda leaves the story of the church buildings. Much of the rest of her thesis, and it runs almost 100 pages, but much of the rest of her thesis talks about the development of the school, which made sense. That was her profession and occupation. She talks about the many faculty members, sisters and lay, who taught at the school over the years, the different principals, the curriculum, and so on. And I may get around to reading more of that and provide a little bit of that history to you as well. But for now, I'm going to leave you with the story of the building of our present church. Now, I will add this. If you see in our church on the walls of the transepts of the church, that would be the far right and left walls under the large, beautiful stained glass windows, I think you'll see some small candle holders and candles on the walls. And I can't recall exactly in which year they were placed there, but as I understand it, the church wasn't able, maybe no church is able to be finally dedicated to the diocese until it is debt-free. So once St. Benedict's finally paid off what was, again, I'm sure, a large mortgage on the current church building, the bishop was able to come and give a final dedication of our church, and that caused us to put those candles on the walls of the church. So there you have it, at least for now.